Hello, thank you so much for tuning into my channel. My name is Meredith. I am an astrologer and an intuitive that works out of North Carolina. And I am so happy to be able to have internet right now to record this little talk. I hope it won't be too long. Just on a couple of thoughts of these things that have been kind of burbling up in my mind about a couple of things, right? I want to talk a little bit about the individualism versus collectivism and like this sort of like inverted and toxic aspects of both, as well as the upright aspects of them. I want to talk a little bit about the Jupiter transits this year. Pisces and Aries have a very different energy, even though there's a little bit of similarities with signs that are right next to each other. But I think that the Jupiter in Aries is going to bring a very different type of frequency, a type of energy. And I want to talk about that and how it relates to the archetypes of Pisces and Aries. So there tends to be this dissolving into the collective a little bit with Jupiter and Pisces, like mind melding and other things like that. And with Jupiter and Aries, there tends to be a more like individualistic, like personal responsibility flavor. And I want to talk about both of those because I do think that like every other like bullshit polarity that exists that are completely engineered, I believe that there's aspects of the individualism versus collectivism debate, if you want to call it that, that is also engineered, especially as it relates to current events. So I also want to talk a little bit about materialism because it's physicalism, materialism, atheism, these things are kind of like a cancer in my opinion, or like at least the disacknowledgement that there are other paradigms to operate under is cancerous to spiritual growth on this planet and recognizing ourselves as part of everything that is, was, and ever shall be. So that's what I'm going to talk about, I think. And I'm just going to let myself riff. I haven't done this in a while. Who knows how long this will be. I'm so used to having at this point my podcast co-host Amy on here to kind of, spit ideas around. And, we did a talk at the turn of the year about 2022 and aliens from outer space and how that ties into materialism. And then of course it was deleted off of my computer, which I try not to harbor any serious resentment about, but it's very hard. There was a time where I felt pretty personally attacked, but now I just back everything up, and that's how I protect my work now, so that in the event that something gets deleted before I'm able to upload it, then I can just have that backed up. So yeah, obviously I've cracked into like a couple of different ideological trains of thought in the last few years. I always kind of considered myself to be a little bit of a leftist pre-Rona days. And then I, like many other people, like just saw what that was about and then recoiled from it. When you see like the shadow of yourself, you kind of recoil in the same way. And it's like recognizing the shadow in something else. And I personally can recognize the shadow on both sides of the political argument, which I think is kind of a joke anyway at this point, but it rests on a couple of like notions that I feel like are kind of faulty. And it does go back to the individualism and collectivism thing. In certain, like you want to say like libertarian or like voluntarist or anarchist social circles rather, there's this like inflation of personal responsibility. I'm personally a person who recognizes that no one on this fucking earth can do it for me other than me. It's not true in every instance, but in the instances that matter, in doing my own personal work so that I can stand strong and stand tall, in like deleting off of the hard drive of my mind the victim mentality, which is very hard to do when you've been personally victimized a few different times. You know, I think that I had in my teenage years, especially, and in my 20s, some sexual trauma where it was like every other fucking week, every other day, like something was happening, right? Somebody felt compelled to put their hands on me. And unfortunately, it wasn't until, and fortunately, right? This is both ways. It wasn't until I really took the time and the space with very little resources at the time to afford myself some proper treatment. And when I did that, when I actually healed myself, I believe personally that we can like step out of things, and sure, we might have to rehash them at some point. But I was actually able to step out altogether of my victimhood and out of my PTSD responses, especially towards men. I was like really like mistrustful of men at a certain point in time. And, you know, I'm personally just recounting my experience. I'm not suggesting that anyone like hurry up and heal, because as we know, like healing doesn't necessarily function like that, right? But so, you know, as I healed, I noticed that, and as I took responsibility for my healing, right, I noticed that the amount that I was like put upon in that way, and the amount that I was traumatized, re-traumatized, re-traumatized, re-traumatized went away. That went away. And now I feel like if I'm standing in a place and someone is coming up and giving me unwanted attention, I honestly could ruffle my fucking energetic feathers and make them so uncomfortable that they have to fucking leave my field. So I think that it's possible to like address all of the components of something that is challenging you to overcome it. I don't think that there's like a timetable on that. I think everybody is different and everybody needs to honor what they need, period, especially in a world that is created and engineered to foster these fake ass dichotomies and also to foster trauma and abuse cycles and survival type energy, right? That's heavy, heavy, heavy in the energy right now. So I'm not belittling anyone for feeling that way. I actually think that's a very normal response to this world. But you know, the crux of the individualism, you know, there's like, there is a shadow behind that, right? That I've seen, especially with, you know, and I'm not a feminist. I've been very open about that. I've unpeeled myself from that. Now I revile and I am repulsed by what that is due to the shadow that I can see behind it, right? But especially with men, there can tend to be this like, I can do it on my own, or like, it's all about me is kind of like the like known about shadow of individualism. But there is this like deeper layer underneath that that says like, I can do it all by myself and I don't need anyone and I don't need your help because I got this and I can do it. Da, 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 da. And I guess that's what we would think of as like toxic masculinity, and how that kind of like pairs well and goes hand in hand with individualism, which is, I guess, at the crux of the you know, more right-leaning or like libertarian or, you know, even like anarchist or voluntarist type of mindset and type of framework that they're operating from. obviously someone who is a little bit more leftist and a little bit more collectivist in orientation, either because they've done a lot of inward reflection and they've thought about it or not, because you can kind of see like how, this is this individualism. It's like, okay, but what about those around you, right? That's like a common argument for collectivism. Like, it's not just about you. And I think that that's what like pulled me into liberalism, was this false construct that somehow, voting leftist and like, or liberal and like, voting and like, putting a fucking sticker on my shirt and somehow like, being arrogant enough to think that I can save the planet, which is just like, I think of like both of these like outdated ideologies as just cancers and like parasites on the psyche of modern day human beings, right? So, simultaneously, obviously, I've said this multiple times, that I believe that it is extremely unfair in a society where the collective does not value itself. Otherwise, we would not be in this position that we're in today. So why, as an individual, should I give myself up or like, sacrifice myself on the altar of the collective when the collective doesn't even care about the collective? So to me, I kind of, I reject both of these notions, these false notions, and I want to tie them into astrology, because I do believe that in May, when Jupiter moves into Aries, after what I perceive is going to be the biggest propaganda bullshit and the fakest news that we've ever seen in our lives, believe it or not, thanks to the Smith-Mundt Act and other, ways that especially Americans are propagandized and poisoned, for that matter, is I think of like, April and even March, for that matter, and the propaganda campaign that's like waiting in the queue for that time for the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, especially on April 9th through the 12th is when it goes exact. The recoiling from that and the aftermath of that, I personally believe is going to be an outgrowth of both the positive aspects and the negative aspects of individualism. So no, I can't do it on my own. I need other people. I need community. As a human being, I need to be able to like sit in someone else's energy field. I need to be able to like have people to talk to. I'm a person that like is social, is communal, and I am certainly not going to just assume that because somebody has different beliefs than me, then they're a KGB or they're a CIA or they're an FBI or they're a or an NPC, because I see a lot of that, right, in my circles that I frequent. And I'm also like most certainly not going to be offering myself as a, sovereign woman up to this, this false sense of collectivism. Not to say that all leftists are abiding by a false sense of collectivism and that all people who are individualists are, like right wing. And I actually want to sort of break apart some of those boxes and some of those like ideological trappings, so that when it comes time for Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in April, and for the Jupiter and Aries transit that's coming both this year from May until November and next year in 2023, I just want to make sure that the people who, like occasionally check into this channel are able to kind of see the lie and the discrepancy within both of those ideologies, and to really begin to think for yourself. Because if there's a polarity that's been created, then created, right? left versus right, this versus that, individualism versus collectivism. And then pretty soon I'm going to talk about materialism versus mysticism and where I even fall in that and can falter in that. If there's been an engineered polarity, you can tell because your emotions get really involved, right? You feel a rush to defend and a rush to like, there's such a thing as a programmed response, you know, and I started to feel this way when I started to unpack from or unpeel from veganism a little bit. I started eating eggs and butter because it's what my body was craving. And I started to feel like, with regard to just eating meat in general, I started to feel this like this guilt or shame or like, you know, and I was like, that feels extremely like not wanting to kill grandma, if you catch my drift. So, you know, I try to examine my own biases, and I'm not perfect in this way, but I do want to say that it's good at least to examine some of these artificial, I mean, especially the people that I know who are the most instinctually reactive in these conversations or in these types of like polarized conversations, think that they're not. They don't think that they're in a box. They don't know that they are. And so it's very much like a sure of oneselfedness. And I think that that is dangerous, to be so sure of oneself and to be so sure of one's worldview that you're literally arguing for something that might be morally bankrupt and devoid of any goodness, but thinking that you're on the side of whatever, like the right side. Everyone thinks that they're on the right fucking side, and that's why I refuse. I have nuanced beliefs about everything, and I have been working through this podcast that I've been doing and through all of this uncomfortable putting myself out there in the last few years and taking abuse for it. I've been working to really like piece apart and to distance myself a little bit from, you know, these artificial sides, because they feel artificial. When you have enough intuitive awareness, you can feel, you know, what might be like controlled opposition or what might be, you know, an artificial type of box for your mind to hang out in. So with Jupiter and Pisces coming up into a conjunction to Neptune, I just want everybody to be aware that that it's gonna get pretty real in terms of the propaganda that, like, I don't even think we've seen anything yet. So, you know, really just tuning into your own spiritual center and drawing a lot of spiritual energy from this conjunction is like the top tier best way to play it. But getting sucked into the collective and what's going on in the world, though it might be challenging not to, and of course, keep your finger on the pulse, do what you need to do, what you feel that you need to do for your own safety and all of that stuff. I'm not saying that, but I am saying, like, we run into people sometimes in this, you know, conspiracy movement or whatever, who tend to make it their everything. Right. And it can be hard not to, especially like for me, when I started to have memories and all this dreams and visions and all of this, right, I was like, oh my God. And it was hard for me to focus on anything else because I fixate, you know, so kind of allowing yourself to come back to like this tea that I'm drinking or like, you know, this moment, and like to really like start to create however you can in your own life. That does a lot for people in general. So yeah. All right. So I'm going to talk now about materialism. And I don't mean like consumerism. I think that there's like a confusion there when I say materialism or like materialistic society. I do not mean like consumer driven, although that is very much true and very much not in alignment with my own values anyway. You know, I would forget that material things exist if it weren't critical that I fucking handle that, or put a cap on that, right? So with my Saturn return, I felt like I had to. So materialism, though, is this idea, at least from the lens of how Steiner describes it in anthroposophical mysticism. Steiner describes materialism almost in a way of like favoring like logic and favoring like imperialism, or not imperialism. Well, maybe there's a reason I said that, but favoring empiricism and sort of like only what we can observe in the practical universe, right? And so for anyone who's ever experienced like a bunch of synchronicity like rapidly, or for anyone who has taken like psilocybin, or for anyone who has like done some type of like physical cleansing, I mean, for anybody who has an active dream life, like you kind of know on some level that there's more that is going on in this reality, and that there's more in terms of like your place in this reality too. Like this is not something that's reserved for, like the people on the screen, that this is something that like includes everyone, right? So there's a lot more to this reality and to our lives even, right? Then so for me, like as somebody who's had the kind of life that I had, where I've been shown and have had demonstrated for me like just how bendable this reality is, and how magical I am. Frankly, I don't even give a shit, I'll say it, how magical I am, and how I've had these experiences that I can't deny in favor of the materialism mindset. So I think of examples of materialism as like NASA, right? Never a straight answer. Not a space agency. I mean, there's so many different like fake names for NASA, but this idea that we are so small and so small and so insignificant, and like we are the virus, right? This is where like the really harmful, like I would even consider it to be like anti-life programming comes in through the context of materialism, and is deeply connected to Ahriman, which is another conversation probably for a different day. But I will say that, there is nothing like taking, whether it's like the pagan gods or the aspects of divinity that exist within us, or the, or the Christian God, even though that's not my favorite thing ever, for sure. And definitely there's like a whole list of snares, and religion is used to control people. And I know that, but at least with Christian beliefs, there's something higher than scientists and government officials, right? So if you want to program a society to forget about their natural connection to the natural universe, if you want to program a society to be disconnected from themselves and their soul, so that they think that they are insignificant and existing on a spinning ball at 6.66 unit of, it's just so ridiculous to me. Like at this point, if you want to program a society to be fearful and to look external for authority, really by creating, I mean, this is materialism as a religion, and we're really like it's shoved down our throats in early life. And, I'm of the generation who was lucky enough to receive both materialism programming and religious programming. So, and having to kind of release a lot of the tethers from that and recognize that I'm a fucking mystic. And this is like where I sit with all of this is like, because even in reconnecting more recently to the process of ritual in a very deep and profound way, when you're able to spin your own universe on a dime, you're less likely to look externally for something to help shield you from a boogeyman in the form of a virus, or in the form of a demon, or in the form of another type of culture, like how everyone was doing with Muslims after 9/11. So I really think that the crux of materialism is to be able to introduce concepts gradually over the course of time to where people forget how divine they actually are. People forget their soul, and it's nothing in this society encourages us to go spiritual. And if it does, I mean, I've talked about my experiences a little bit on peeling from the new age, right? And there's aspects of that where there are deep truths in there, and then there's aspects of that where there's bullshit in there, and nobody has the right answer. Like when people feel like they have it, like whatever it is, I just have to laugh because it's a joke. There's so much that's unsure. And, I believe that some of these archetypes of savior and victim and martyr, and how all of these connect, I believe that they are all kind of connected to the archetype of Pisces, which as Neptune, because oh my gosh, I mean, I have a Pisces moon, and in my relationships, I swear I will like make myself, or I have made myself, not anymore, no, but I have made myself like an empty shell of a fucking person, right? To either accommodate someone, or to heal them, or to fix all of their problems. And I've been alone for the last year and some change, the year and a half, right? And I'm done with that. I'm done with that. Of course, I'll always have compassion for who is in front of me as my partner, but you can't help anyone save themselves. People have to do their own work so that they can begin to repattern their own shit, so that, this. And that's the thing about Ra from Human Design, and also Rudolf Steiner talked about how this, the end of this epoch or whatever is individual. Like this is, let me put actually my, gotta charge up my computer somehow. All right, sorry about that. I refuse to edit this also, so it'll be fun. Professionalism. Ignore my messy kitchen, please. All right. All right, I don't even remember really where I was. Oh, I was just saying how like I've learned the hard way not to be codependent in that way. And I've done a lot of not only 12-step work, but also just like inner work around that, because that kind of mindset doesn't help anybody. You can't really be helpful to someone if you're not complete within yourself. And so as a Pisces moon, I've really learned the ins and outs of all of these archetypes, right? Wanting to save others. I still have that impulse today. I'm not perfect. I keep, I'll say that until the cows come home. I'm still working on all of this too with you, but, I think that these archetypes get really fucking played out. They're super deep in our genetic memory. They're super deep in our history as a race. And so I do think that there's some measure of individualism that is needed for us to value ourselves individually and to make decisions from that space of understanding who we are and recognizing our value. Because if we only knew, this is where I get fucking pissed with materialism, because if you could only see yourself through the eyes of divine, light or whatever. I mean, I hate to use that, but it's like, if you could only see yourself in that aspect, in that light, you wouldn't choose to go down the shitty road with an abusive partner, or you wouldn't choose to put the needle in your arm one more time, or you wouldn't choose to, like, you know, engage with problematic behaviors. And I know that it's not like a one and done type of thing. It's not an in and out type of thing. But really, I mean, we wouldn't choose some of these things for ourselves if we only knew who we were as souls, or if we could see and even sense into the parts of that extend beyond, you know, this dimension and other dimensions, right? It's, you know, and so I feel on some level, you know, I've had to get over some resentment because I feel like that aspect of me has not been able to come through fully, or like has not been allowed to thrive fully. And on some level, I can understand now, especially now, just due to recent events, like why some of these things are occulted, why some of the secrets are occulted. And I think that that's all. I just want to make an announcement too, while you're here. The next thing that I'm going to write is on my Substack is I'm just going to do a little memo about the Pluto return, and I'm going to write where I'm putting my personal resources. So I don't know fucking shit about shit. So if you want to read it, that's fine. Or maybe if you just want to read it to see what I think could happen based on the US chart, you know, then that will be up. And also, if you would like to join my Substack, one of the next things as well that I'm going to write is I'm going to write a pretty detailed account on on the full moon in Leo on the 16th, because I think that's a very intense full moon, and I'm going to be writing about it for all of the rising signs and every house. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning into this ramble. It'll probably be Thursday, the 10th, when I'm able to put this up, but I really appreciate you for tuning in, and I hope that this was worth your while. I would love to know your reflections as well. If you want to leave them in the comments, feel free. And yeah, take care of yourselves, please. Have a good day.